One of the short stories, the title story, Island Rule, was originally published in the Colorado Review. It won the Nelligan Prize for short fiction. And that one is, it's set on an unnamed island that is experiencing an accelerated evolution. And the theme or the concept of island rule is this ecological theory that premises that on islands, small omnivorous animals tend to get bigger, while large carnivores tend to get smaller. So in general terms, prey species get bigger and predators get smaller. And so it's this kind of compelling, at least to me, power reversal, right? And I wanted to play with that notion, but bring it into fiction, right? And so sometimes I'll take an idea like that from my geography background and conceptualize a story around it. The book is set in, one world, one weird world with its own rules. As you mentioned, the opening story, Disaster Kids, is about a mom who's so angry that she becomes an actual monster. And that kind of carries through the collection. She's sort of lurking in the background of many of the stories, this monster mom. And, what I was working at with that particular story was this idea that, women, we carry so much of the mental load, or mothers in particular, of the mental load in family, in the running of our families and the caretaking of our children. And so I wanted to talk about how I wanted to have a mother experience that, what is typically a very private type of rage, in a very public way, right? So she's leaving these mounds of bones, all of her victims, in public places. And it's sort of this torment and terror that's running through the collection. People don't know why it's there. I mean, the reader knows, but the people in the world don't know who's responsible, where they're coming from. It's just this sort of ongoing uncertainty that we all have to live with, kind of like the way we live with COVID or the way we live with gun violence, right? These sorts of things. And so I'd written that story as a standalone, but I wasn't quite done with it. I didn't want to turn it into a novel, but I realized I liked some of the elements of the story and I wanted to carry them through a collection, right? And so I started to think about the structure of the book and what that would look like. And really what I was exploring was this idea of the people that come into and out of our lives and the way that they sort of, orbit. And sometimes those are tight orbits and people come back into our lives quite quickly. And other times it takes quite a long time. And so the book is actually structured like that. The first and the last story are in conversation with one another. Then the second and the second from last story, and so on and so forth until you get to the middle. And then you have two stories which are the mirror reflection of one another, both in title, Mankato and Otoknam, and in terms of perspective. One is narrated by one neighbor, and then the other story is narrated by the other neighbor. What connects the first and last story is that you have the first story is narrated by the monster mom, and the last story is narrated by her daughter. The second story is narrated by the monster mom's neighbor, who's pet sitting this hamster for a mother named Dee, who narrates the second to last story. And then you have a set of teeth that from an explorer named Goldenrod, a 17th century explorer whose teeth are removed when he tries to cross through the Northwest Passage and gets caught, and his crew decides to remove them from his mouth. And so that connects the third and third from last story, and so on.